Hey everybody, good afternoon. How's it going? Let's talk. Let's talk as a fan base here. Let's talk the Seahawks and their short-term expectations and short-term goals. So, yesterday was a pretty big day in Seahawks history. We traded our best quarterback ever. We cut our greatest linebacker ever. And while we don't know everything yet with regards to what we're planning on doing, and we'll get to that later, we do know that it has been heavily rumored that a Tyler Lockett trade is coming next. And I mean that would make a decent deal of sense to me. I want to be clear about that. The dead money you eat hurts, but Lockett just doesn't have a ton of value on this team at this point. I don't think so. That may very well end up being what happens. And if we do these things, if we take 26 million dead on the Russ trade, 4 million dead on the Bobby cut, and then you would take a boatload. I don't know exactly how much it is. Apparently, there's some dispute over that. Dead money on the Lockett trade, then 2022 is going to be what they call a rebuilding year. And I find it very interesting that this brain trust, this ownership group, and just the team in general would potentially be signing on board for that. But honestly, unless we make the trade, which I think you guys know what trade I'm talking about, but I'm going to save that for a later video. Unless we make the trade, this is looking like a punt season. This is looking like a season where you go in understanding that we're probably not going to be that good. We're probably going to win like 5 or 6 games at most. And that's okay. Maybe it's not okay, but it's something we're willing to live with because sometimes you have to let the toilet flush before you take another dump in it. Okay? You can't just keep piling dumps into the toilet. Sometimes you got to flush it. And I'm sorry if anybody was eating when they were watching this video, but I couldn't think of a better analogy. Sometimes you gotta just let things go over you. You gotta let like we always talk about kicking the can down the road when it comes to doing stuff with the salary cap and paying players. Well, sometimes you gotta let the can kick you. If we move Lockett, this is officially a we're letting the can kick us type of year. And with what we know about the Seahawks fan base from last year alone, I have to wonder how is the fan base going to handle not only a bad year, but a semi planned bad year? In 2021, Seahawks fans were not happy and they made their displeasure known. They didn't show up to home games by the end of the season. There were a lot of empty seats at home games in the last stretch. After the season was over, I can specifically remember the Lions game and Bears game. Not a whole lot of filled seats compared to the typical, and it's understandable why. The team was basically out of playoff contention by that point. We had one of the biggest local TV rating declines, so it wasn't just people staying home because of COVID. People lost interest in this team, and they didn't want to watch it. So when you combine that with some of the other, maybe more anecdotal evidence, but nevertheless, I consider this stuff to be valuable, where you have the fan base booing the team for 3 straight hours in that game against the Cardinals, and you have a fan base that is not willing to tolerate a bad product. They are not one of these fan bases that is going to turn out for every single game no matter what. They are not ride or die at all. And who can blame them? Tickets are expensive. Following a team is time consuming. Why would you want to be putting the time and money and all the investments you have to make into a team that isn't good? And in some cases, it even got to the point where the Seahawks' bottom line was probably getting affected. Having empty seats at home games is something that even Jody Allen is probably going to take note of. But that was one bad season. And I always say on this channel, it's kind of become a meme now. I always say it's not just one bad season. It's 7 seasons of not being great. But realistically, we are talking about one season where you actually were a bad team that missed the playoffs after many years of being at least above average. and the fan base already turned to that degree. They weren't even tuning in to watch the team on TV in some cases. So if we go into this season with Drew Lock or Geno Smith or Mitch Trubisky starting a quarterback for us, then what are we going to do then? Are we going to see half-empty stadiums the whole year? Are we going to see another plunge in local TV ratings? Are people just not going to bother tuning in? How is our fan base going to react to this? And maybe even bigger than apathy would be anger. Because it pains me to say what I'm about to say, but if this is what you're going to do, you're going to get rid of Wilson, get rid of Wagner, get rid of Lockett now, and possibly some other players wrapped in there too, and looks like you're going to let Quandre Diggs walk, you're going to let DJ Reed walk, probably going to let some of those guys go. What are you going to do when this season's bad? Because if you do all those things and you start a stopgap quarterback, you're basically saying, yeah, this season's going to be bad. So what pains me to say is unless we are the worst team in the league or like bottom 3, Carroll and Schneider are not going anywhere because 2022 is not the year where they put their merits on the table. 2022 is the year you just kind of take the slap like a grown man and come back the next year and see what you got. So Carroll and Schneider are probably not on the hot seat. They've bought themselves at least a couple years of time now, I think, because they can say, hey, we don't have our quarterback yet. You got to give us some time to use these assets. Some of the assets we got are next year. They're not going to have any value this year because they're 2023 picks. So what I'm trying to say is that how is this fan base going to handle a year that, as of right now, is easily going to be worse than last year? And that's not me being one of these Wilson guys who is trying to fearmonger about how, oh, now that we lost Wilson, we're never going to be good again. No, I'm not one of those guys. Those guys are clowns. I can't stand those people. But 2022 has a chance to be not only bad, but bad by design. And I wonder how this fan base is going to handle that, because honestly, with us having an extra first round pick next year, if we are bad in 2022 and we have like a top 10 pick and a pick in the 20s, and we have the extra second round pick as well, and we also have all this money coming off our books because we'll have flushed the Wilson money and the Lockett money, etc., that has a chance to be a great foundation, but you're going to have to give it time. 2022 under this scenario would be bad, and 2023 would probably be a year where you're trying to find your feet underneath you. You're basically saying, okay, we've got the potential, but we might need a little bit of time to make this right. You might be looking at a team that is ready to compete for a Super Bowl by 2024, but what are you going to do in the meantime? I mean, I personally, look, I will pay to watch a team rebuild. I would rather watch an honest rebuild by a bad team than a failed attempt to compete with a mediocre team. Okay? To me, the worst circle of hell is what happened last year to the Seahawks, where they tried to go for a Super Bowl, but they didn't really try, and they ended up being bad in service of nothing. They had no first-round pick. They had no reason to be bad, and they were. That, to me, is the worst. So, are we going to be like 76ers fans were when they were trusting the process? Do you think this fan base is capable of saying, yeah, we're bad, but you know what? We're going to support the team because their process is good. They're drafting the right players. They're getting the right players. They're setting the right stuff up. We just need to give this some time. And at the end of the day, it's hard to know how this fan base is going to react. But based off what we saw in 2021, I have to believe that if we go like 5-12 or 6-11 in 2022, they're going to be trying to run Carroll out of here on a rail. And don't get me wrong, I want to get Carroll out of here because I don't believe in him anymore. But in the name of a good process, you do need to give this whole scenario you've worked out here time to play out. And maybe part of the scenario is Carroll to step away next year to make way for Desai, but that's still a process. You can't say, oh, 2022 is bad, therefore Sean Desai needs to get going, or whatever the plan is here. I don't know what the succession plan might be, but it might be Desai. So how is this how is this fan base going to deal with it? This ownership group and this front office, Brain Trust, is putting a lot of faith in this fan base to be smart here, to understand what they're doing, and if they truly do punt on the 2022 season, which right now to me seems the most likely scenario, not that they're going to intentionally try to lose, but they're also going to put a half-hearted attempt to compete. Are we as a fan base smart enough to realize that? When we show up to the games, we don't boo when the team is struggling. We understand the struggles are there. We're looking for signs of improvement. We're looking for something to get excited about in 2023 and 2024. So, do we have it in us? Or by the end of this year, is Carroll going to basically be run out of town because the fan base just can't take it anymore? I don't know. But being objective here, putting my dislike of Carroll to the side, this is the process we've committed to. If we do indeed decide to move a guy like Lockett, you do have to let that process play out. You can't start the process knowing it's going to take 3 years and then bail on it after 1 year. Will the fan base understand that? I'm really interested to see, because I'll say it again, I would much rather watch a bad team that is rebuilding than the crap I had to watch last year. No contest. All right, let me know what you guys think down below. How's this fan base going to take it? How about you? Are you willing to watch bad football if it's in service of building something good? Or would you rather just watch an okay team that is at least mostly entertaining? All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks.